This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another live. I'm going to be talking to Amanda Carneiro. We're going to be talking about gut health, fat loss, hormones, training, and so much more. So stay tuned for this awesome episode.
Hello.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going well. How are
I'm
you?
well, thank you.
Awesome. It just started your day there, right? It's morning for you.
It is. It's about 9:30. It's like a very cloudy day, so it feels even like earlier than
Oh, yeah.
it should.
So how did your morning routine look like this morning?
Good question. I woke up a bit later. I don't wake up with an alarm, so I just let myself
That's
sleep.
good.
And I've been fighting a little bit. I don't know if you could hear it in my voice, but I'm fighting a little bit of a sickness because I was out of town last week and not
Yeah.
sleeping enough.
Uh-huh.
So I slept till like 7:30, which is a bit late for me. I usually wake up at like 6.
Mm-hmm.
But we're moving into fall and winter here, so the sun is rising a little bit later. It's rising at like 7:30. So I usually wake up around the time the sun rises.
Yeah.
So I woke up, did some journaling for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then made coffee, and then went outside. And I usually take a walk.
Uh-huh.
Um, for like 20-30 minutes or so, just to like get sun in my eyes and get some movement in.
Uh-huh.
When it's warmer, I will usually just like sit outside
Mm-hmm.
and read, but it's a little too cold for that at the moment for
Yeah.
me. I'm not used to
Yeah.
this cold
Uh-huh.
weather. And then, but today it's a little bit rainy out, so I just stood outside. I went outside. I have a backyard. Stood in the grass, just looked towards the
Nice.
sun because there was no sun out that I could see.
Yeah.
Looked toward the sun for like 5 or 10 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Was listening to a little bit of a podcast, drinking my coffee, and
Nice.
then came in. Got ready for the day.
Nice. Yeah, there's so much there, for people to take, from Amanda's routine, because even though, let's say, it was cloudy outside, and even though you didn't feel maybe like, being outside because it was cold, you still got out there and you did it. So, perseverance, discipline, consistency, that's what it's all about. It's not about perfection, but it's about showing up, right?
Totally. It's funny. I posted something on Instagram yesterday saying that I was like out for my sunrise walk, and somebody messaged me and they were like, "How do you get motivated to go outside when it gets cold?" And like, truth be known, I've been living in the tropics and in warm weather, and even
Mhm.
before that, I was living in LA where it doesn't really get so cold.
Yeah.
So this is definitely going to be a new experience for me. I'm in Colorado now, and
Mhm.
there's a winter, a real winter here. um, but she asked me, "How do you get motivated when it starts getting cold to get outside?" And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Stop waiting for motivation."
Yeah.
Like I think we expect to have this like, oh, I want to go do this. It's like, no, we don't. Like most days I don't want to go to the gym.
Hmm.
Most days I don't want to cook myself like, a meal. I want things to just be brought to me and just have things to be easy. But if you
Hmm.
wait for motivation, it's never going to get done. So you just have to
Yeah.
just go do it. That's what I said to her. I was like, just stop making, like, just go.
Yes. Yes.
Even
Yeah.
if
And
it's
it's
for a
all
few
about building.
minutes.
Yeah, and it's all about building that, healthy routine and habit, even though sometimes some things may feel uncomfortable at first. Like even some days I'm not feeling like, training, but when I show up to the gym or doing my workout outside, I just feel that, once I've done a couple of sets, I'm already feeling so grateful that I started and that I'm there and doing it, because it just makes you realize that, oh, it was just that beginning phase that my body was just not feeling it today, but I still showed up. And then afterwards, I can still reap the benefits of doing it.
Totally. And that's exactly how I feel. Like a lot of times I don't want to go train, or I'm tired, or, I feel like I have a million other things that I
Yeah.
need to do. And I'm like, I don't want to go
Uh-huh.
spend an hour and a half at the gym. And sometimes I just tell myself, like, just go for 10 minutes, just like
Yeah.
start. And if you want to leave and you're not really feeling it, you can go.
Yeah.
But like you said, once you get started, you're way more likely to be like, okay, this actually isn't as bad as I thought it would be. And actually it feels good.
Uh-huh.
And it's, I know that it's going to give me a benefit. So
Yeah.
usually you end up just staying anyway.
I love it how we started off this conversation with it being more into like mindset and, this kind of, we were going to dive more into, biology, but this is such a big part of it, right? Like 50% of the work is literally in your mind, or maybe even more, because how you plan your day or how you determine things are going to go, that's how they're going to go. So if you think your day's going to be shit, then it's going to be shit, right? Then if you think it's going to be good, it's more likely going to be good. Like the odds are going to be for you, not against you, but they're going to be sure against you if you determine that.
100%. And it's interesting because, yeah, I mean, people want to know, like, oh, what are the supplements, or like, how do you, like, what are the steps to XYZ, and like what are the XYZ steps to fat loss or gut health? And at the end of the day, if you don't have the mindset piece of it, I have courses, and I have a fat loss course, and the first module in that course is about mindset, because you have to get your mindset right in order to then take the steps that are going to get you to where you want to be. Of course, all the steps are important, but if you are believing that you don't have what it takes, or you don't have the quote unquote discipline, or you don't have the motivation, or your your genetics are the reason why you can't achieve whatever you want, then that is going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is why I start my day with journaling. This is like a newer practice, and I've gone in and out of it, but I want to start my day with, like, feeling positive emotions, thinking how great the day is going to be, thinking how I'm going to get everything that I want in this life, because that is important. That is going to change your energy and the way that you're showing up in the world,
Absolutely.
and it's going, like, if you don't think that you have if you don't think that you can get to your goal, then of course you're not going to take the steps to get there.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for all of this great information. And, this lays a fantastic foundation for everything that we're going to talk about, because if everything that we talk about right now, if people don't apply it, well, it doesn't make any difference in your life, right? You can have all the knowledge in the world, but unless you actually, how they say that knowledge is wisdom, but it's more like application. Application is like where the power is, because where knowledge is power. If you don't apply the knowledge, you're not going to get the powerful effect of applying that knowledge. So you might know all the things in the world, but if you're not applying anything, you're not going to see any difference in your life.
This is the major issue with social media, because people will consume and consume and consume. And I have clients come to me that are like, I've been following you for years. I've been following all the people in the nutrition space. I've been reading all the books, and yet I still can't get to where I'm going. And I'm like, this is an issue of too much knowledge. Like, and not enough application. It's like, if you jump from one thing to another, or you're listening to everybody who has a different approach and a different idea of how to get there, you're going to be paralyzed, because it's almost too much information. Right. And you could know all of the things. Like, I mean, trust me, I still fall into some bad habits, and I'm like, okay, I know what I should be doing. And yet I'm not actually doing it. So it's like, how do we get to actually doing it, rather than just like filling our brains with more information, which most people don't need, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about very small swaps. What I found the most effective is, like, whatever you're doing in your daily life already that you feel like is suboptimal to your routine, or is actually detrimental even for your health, let's say like smoking or drinking alcohol, or consuming porn or something like this, which is basically zapping your energy, taking you away from reality. This is actually the best way, is actually just to replace it with something that would be positive for you. So if, for example, you would normally smoke, maybe you could practice some breath work routine. Maybe that could be the time where to implement breath work, where you actually would be doing the habit of smoking, or you're trying to change the habit, you're trying to change the behavior until your body has fully detoxified away from those substances. So then you are not dependent on the substance, but also the habit of doing it, because many times we may not even be addicted to the substance. It's just the routine of doing it. But that's the same thing we can take in a positive way. So we can actually, make a habit of going and working out, maybe 4 or 5 times per week, and making sure that we are eating our meals, throughout the day, that we are hitting our protein goals, making sure that we are sleeping enough hours, and basically doing all the things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there is a big factor there in terms of, like, the neural, like the more times you do something, you are creating a stronger neural pathway,
Yeah.
right? So in the beginning of not doing that habit, it does take a lot of quote unquote willpower, whatever you want to call it. It does take
Yeah.
a lot of strength to not do that. But then the more you don't do that habit, or the more you do another habit, right? So the more you don't do that habit, is that neural pathway is going to weaken. And so it's not going to be
Yeah.
as strong. So we think like,
Yeah.
oh, it's so hard today. But actually, if you don't do it today, tomorrow is actually going to be much easier,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But we can't sometimes think past that first day, or that in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I think it is really important to remember that. And then the more you do another habit that maybe is more challenging for you, the more you're going to strengthen that neural pathway. And
Yeah.
then it does become way easier to do that, like eating
Automated.
processed food, or, what have you.
Yeah. Exactly. Talk to me about habit stacking. Do you know much about habit stacking?
Yeah, I read James Clear's book, and I know he talks about that. Yeah, I think it is a really easy way to kind of get things done, especially like I mean, I think of it like, um, with supplements. Like there's supplements I like Shilajit, or like certain supplements I don't want to take, and I'm like, oh
Mhm.
God. But like I make my coffee in the morning, and my coffee, I have it stacked with like taking some supplements, or like, mixing some things into water, or like adding things, like I add creatine into my coffee, and there's
Yeah.
certain supplements I add, like collagen into my coffee. And so that's like an easy way to get those things in, where maybe they would be more challenging if you're like, at some point in the day, I'm going to have it. Well, it's like if
Yeah.
you stack it with something you're already doing, then it's going to be much easier as well.
Exactly. Like for example, today I didn't work out, and normally I always take in my pre-workout a bunch of the supplements with my creatine, but on my non-training days, I just take my creatine just to stay fully stocked up, my creatine reserves. And basically, I forgot to take it today because I didn't train.
Right.
So thank you for reminding me.
That's why I like to take my creatine in my coffee in the morning. I know people say like, do you take a pre-workout?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So if you take it any time of the day, pretty much it's going to be effective, right? It's just the placebo effect of taking it as a pre-workout. You feel that it's somehow more potent.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I know. And that's why, so I just take it in the mornings. I'm like, it's going to get done. And at least like, I'll never forget it.
Yeah, yeah,
Like you did
exactly,
today.
exactly. Before we go any deeper into our conversation, tell us like who you are and what you do, because I didn't introduce you. Sorry.
Well, my name is Amanda. My company is called Raw Fitness and Nutrition. I do one-on-one nutrition, lifestyle, health coaching. Um, and I also have, so the one-on-one really is reserved for people with like more chronic issues,
Mm,
or they're, people who are not able to kind of do it on their own. They want a little bit more support and hand holding. I look at, um, blood markers and all kind of lab testing with clients as well. And then I also have courses that I've created over the last few years. I have a Fat Loss 101 course, and then a Gut Health 101 course. And those courses are both just like completely self-guided. So you purchase the course, you take yourself through it. I'm also inside the course to answer any questions. So I am in there for people. There's no calls or anything with students of the course.
mhm,
And then I also have a high protein dessert recipe book that I created a couple years ago. That's like 50 desserts, breakfast items that are high protein, so you can still indulge, but also
mhm.
very fat loss friendly and gut health friendly as well. And yeah, I kind of came into this work basically accidentally. Um, I was living in LA at the time, and I was pursuing acting, which is like a whole nother lifetime ago. And I was just looking for a job where I could make good money and have a flexible schedule. And a friend of mine was doing personal training, and she was like, yeah, you should do that. It's like, it's a great job to have while you're auditioning. And I was like, no, I don't want to be a gym person. Like I just like, I don't want to be that person who's obsessed with their health. And, and then I was like, at some point I was like, might as well just try and see. Cause I was like working in restaurants, and I was really just like struggling with the schedule and going
Mm,
to auditions. And so I started personal training, and like I became certified and I started like really diving deep into health, and I just like wanted to talk to my clients all day about like their nutrition and their lifestyle habits and what they were doing. And
Mhm.
from there I transitioned to more one-on-one health coaching, and then started my business from there, and here we are today.
So you didn't go like the traditional route, like most people who are personal trainers or coaches, they're focused, a lot on exercise and a lot on specific ways of doing, but you talked more about lifestyle and, maybe a bit more holistic type of nutrition. So did you always have this type of mindset, or was it something that you learned along the way?
I don't think I always had that mindset. I think when I became certified as a personal trainer, it was all about calories in, calories out.
Right.
And it's funny, I've, I still have my personal training certification, so I still have to get like recertified every year. And like
Hmm.
a couple of years ago, I took their like sports nutrition
Hmm.
certification
Hmm.
just as a way to get some CEUs. And I was just like, this information is like so what? Like, it's really just about calories in, calories out. They don't talk about like nutrients. They don't talk about any of that stuff.
Hmm.
And so that is how I kind of got into it. And I think because I was also struggling with my gut health and struggling with a lot of other issues, that I started, I would just like love to go to the bookstore, and I would go to the bookstore, go to the nutrition section, and I would just like pull like I think I just like had an affinity towards it. Like there was like something that was pulling me towards this kind of stuff. But I would like read all the books on Ayurveda,
Hmm.
and I would like do these Ayurvedic cleanses, and these things that were a bit like maybe woo woo back then. Now they're a bit more
Well,
mainstream, a little bit.
yeah.
But I think I was just pulled to that kind of stuff, so I started reading all these books on it. So I was fortunate to understand the calories in, calories out part of it, and the
Yes.
all the exercise portion of
Yeah.
it, and that part of it. But I also knew that there was more to it than that, and there was
Yeah.
also the other things that, oh my god, this is, hold on, sorry, there we go.
No worries. All
I
good.
have a CGM on, and for some reason, like every 20 minutes it just like yells at me for some reason.
Has it
um
passed 20 minutes already? It's like time flies.
I know. It's been like 20 minutes. Hopefully it just like doesn't keep happening. So I'm so sorry.
Okay, no worries. It's all good.
I should have turned it off before I got on this call. Um, but yeah, so I think I just was drawn to that kind of knowledge, and I just started like reading more and more about it, and it was all just pretty fascinating to me. And like the exercise portion is great, but I also saw, being a personal trainer, that people would come to me 3 times a week for an hour,
Mm.
and they would work out and they would do their best, and
Yeah.
I would do my best to help them. But if they weren't doing all the other
Yeah.
things, they nothing was ever going to change. So like the
Yeah.
exercise portion is great, and like I'm I still work out and I still write plans for clients, and
Yes.
all of that is still great. But I think there's other more important things that you need to be focused on when you're trying to improve your health and
Mm.
lose fat.
Amazing. Oh, this is the perfect segue, because I was going to ask you, like, what are the most important things to consider when it comes to fat loss? What to you?
Yeah. Um, it's an interesting question, because I think depending on who I'm speaking to, there's probably going to
Yeah,
be the top three is going to be a little bit different.
I agree.
Like, I do think this might be a bit controversial to our audiences, but like, I do think calories in, calories out is probably one of the most important things.
It is. I mean, it's obviously foundational, because obviously well, let's talk about then basic metabolic rate, so people can actually understand why calories in, calories out. Even though you take care of the quality of your nutrition, you can't just eat whatever you want, because I've seen it a lot in the alternative health space, that people think just because they're eating seasonal, or they're eating circadian, or they are eating, high quality organic food, animal based or whatever, or carnivore even, or keto, they think that magically you are going to lose the weight. Well, you can to a certain extent, depending on your circumstances before. So if your lifestyle was very bad before, if you were not watching how much you were eating, if you were not exercising, and all of a sudden you shift your nutrition to a carnivore-based, animal-based, or whatever, circadian-based lifestyle, then of course, initially you are going to see some fat loss because your body's literally becoming healthier, right? But then, when you're actually finally your body gets used to that state, you're just going to be plateaued. So if you actually want to take it to another level, you want to see your six pack, you want to get to single digits of body fat, it's a completely another story. We're not necessarily saying that that's chronically healthy, because obviously being shredded all year round is probably not.
Right.
But of course, if you actually want to achieve those goals, you need to understand that what we are saying right here, right now, is super important. So tell me, what is basic metabolic rate and what is total daily energy expenditure?
Yeah, so your basal metabolic rate is basically the amount of calories your body burns at rest. So if you were just sitting around all day, not moving,
Yeah.
like bedridden, your body's still burning calories, right? So
Yeah.
this is your base level. And a lot of people think that they need to eat under that, and that's not necessarily true, right? So your TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure, is how many calories your body is burning based on all of your activity, right? So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things that we do. We walk around, we do stuff around the house, we're using our brain
Yeah.
to process things.
Mhm.
And a lot of times when people are not eating enough, what happens is all the fidgeting that you do, like I'm here on this call, I'm very expressive. And all these things that we do when we're not eating enough, all of a sudden, what's going to happen is you're not going to fidget as much, or you're not
Yeah.
going to be as active, and the little things that you don't realize, like, okay, you know, when people are, let's say, like bodybuilders and that are really like dieting for competition, I've
Yeah.
heard stories. I've never prepped for the bodybuilding competition, but they get so low calories that they can't even, something falls and they're just like, "Ugh, I can't even pick it up." They just like, their body's not going to expend any more energy.
Yeah.
Right. So all these little things add up to how many calories your body burns in a day.
Yeah.
Right. And these things are all important, um, because if you do want to get into a deficit to lose fat, you need to know how many calories your body is burning on a daily basis. So
Exactly.
the way that I like to and we could get bogged down with like all these numbers and like trying to figure out exactly how much our body is burning, and people do all kinds of tests and use
Yeah. Yeah.
calculators online to like figure out how much their body's.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I just lost your voice.
Sorry, are we back?
We're back. We're good.
Sorry. Um,
Okay.
so we can figure out all of these numbers that these machines give us. I
Yeah.
think the best way to figure out how many calories your body is burning, or how many calories you need to maintain your weight and or to be in a
Yeah.
deficit and or to build muscle, if that is your goal, is to just track the amount
Yeah.
of food that you're eating. And
Yeah.
so I like people to do this for 2 weeks. You could do it for a week. I like 2 weeks. It gives like a broader range of time.
Mhm.
And you're tracking your calories for 2 weeks, and you're seeing how many calories you're intaking on average over the course of a day over those 2 weeks, right? So you take all of those, let's say you do it for 14 days, you add that all up over 14 days, you divide by
Yes.
14, and
Yeah.
that is your average amount of intake, right?
Uh-huh.
And if you haven't lost any weight and your weight has stayed the same and you've maintained your weight over that time, then that is going to be your maintenance amount of calories.
Yes.
So in order to go into a deficit, you need to decrease that somehow, either by movement or by um, decreasing your
Yeah.
calories. Now, another thing with that is, like, I've seen people do this, and I will look at their numbers, and a lot of times their protein is so low in
Yeah.
that amount. So people are like, okay, I'm just going to decrease my calories. But I often find that actually staying at that maintenance amount that the average amount that you've been eating is actually a good tactic for a lot of people if they just increase their protein and
Yeah.
decrease their carbohydrates and fat.
Yeah.
Because
Agree.
protein does have a thermogenic effect. So you're actually
Yeah.
burning more calories by eating more protein, which a lot of people
Yes.
don't realize. So
Yeah.
just increasing your protein can actually put you into a quote unquote deficit,
Yes.
and you'll be able to lose weight at that same amount of calories.
Yes. Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
a
because
long-winded
the
answer to
quality.
your question.
No, this is great. This is great. I love it. Like basically the quality of the nutrition that you eat has a massive influence, right? I've made a post a very long time ago where I was comparing a donut which has 300 calories and then a slice of salmon which has 300 calories. Obviously, those two different foods are the same amount of calories, but they have very different biological effects on the body, how the body is going to respond to that food, right? And it's in the different utility inside of the body, like what primarily carbs and fats are the energy sources of the body, and then protein is like the building blocks what the body uses to actually build and heal and to regenerate. So it's going to use that if it actually needs it. If you're breaking down muscle, your body's going to use that because it actually needs it to rebuild itself. But if you are maybe not necessarily training and you are overeating, let's say you are above maintenance in protein, you can still gain weight, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I eat a fairly healthy diet. And if I'm just like not really paying too much attention and just like, eating every time I eat, I'm eating till I'm full and I'm not really
Yeah.
waiting to get hungry. Like, even if I'm eating the healthiest things and even if I'm eating protein all day long, I
Yeah.
still won't lose fat or I still
Mm.
might actually gain weight. And I think this is, in this holistic health space, I think there is a lot of people who are saying like just eat whole foods and you're going to lose fat or you're going to get
Yeah.
to a place where you have a good body composition. And
Initially.
it's just, yeah, initially. And it
Yeah.
maybe, especially if you have a lot of weight
Yeah.
to lose,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
But for most people,
Exactly.
they do need to be more
Yeah.
intentional with it.
Exactly. So what would you do like with a client who, let's say they're already eating, let's take a lady client, they're only eating 1,200 calories, and that is their maintenance, right? They're not losing weight right now. Well, obviously in that case, and they want to lose fat. They come to you and they want to lose fat, and they're currently eating 1,200 calories, and they're trying their best to stay to this level. In that kind of situation, in my opinion, what I would do is just say, let's up the calories a little bit and focus on muscle building so we can increase our basic metabolic rate. And then we can actually utilize more energy throughout the day, right? So where our body's using more energy overall. And then eventually, when we are back at that deficit, our body now is able to lose body fat. But if we are just constantly just aiming to eat that much without increasing, without fixing the root cause of the problem, which, okay, muscle mass is one of the issues, right? But
Sure.
it could mean many other things like hormones, thyroid health, cortisol. It could be a bunch of things that are preventing you from losing body fat, even if you are in low calories. But most of the times, if you have a high metabolic rate and you are adherent to the low calories, you are going to lose the fat, even though it takes a little bit of time, right? So what would you do in that case? Would you do something different?
I think one of the, I had a client recently come to me and she was eating like this is her exact scenario, like
Yeah,
eating 1,200 calories and
yeah,
not able to lose weight, and also doing a lot of cardio and just stressing
yeah,
her body out. So I think the first thing I would want to do with somebody is like really get clear on if they are actually hitting 1,200 calories every single day and for how long they've been doing that.
yeah,
Because a lot of people, that is their target and they think that they're eating 1,200 calories. So like, A, are you even tracking every day? Like, are you actually tracking every day? Or are there days you're like, okay, I'm going to go out to dinner tonight, so I'm like not going to track, or like, oh, I had a bad day, so I'm not tracking today. But every other day I'm hitting 1,200 calories. Well, you
yeah,
could be eating, 3,000 calories one day, and that's going to completely
yeah,
up your amount of calories that you're eating on average a
yeah,
day. So
yeah,
that's the first thing, because I find a lot of people try to eat that much, and that is way too low for them. And so then they have days where they're binging, and then it's almost like, oh, that was like a dream, and we're not gonna count that into my daily caloric intake, right? So
yeah,
that's the first thing I would want to do is make sure they're actually hitting that every day,
yeah,
right? And so if they are,
yeah.
well, let's say if they're not, let's go first. If they're not doing that, then I would either I wouldn't, so it depends. Like I would either have them track for a few weeks and actually see what's going on. And like, even if they're having a binge day or even if they're having a bad day, like track everything
Yeah.
so that we can see the average amount of calories and go from there.
Mhm.
Um, or we'll pick maybe a number that's a bit higher than that, where they can feel like that's actually attainable for them. So they don't feel the
Yes.
need to then binge eat on the days
Exactly.
where, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're getting enough nutrition and they don't
Mhm.
feel
Mhm.
restricted. But let's say they are actually eating 1,200 calories every single day. I think a lot of the time, yeah, they're not building enough muscle to actually increase their metabolic rate.
Mhm.
So I would look at their exercise routine. I would probably take out all cardio, which is really scary for a lot of people
Yeah.
because they feel like that's the only thing that's actually keeping their weight maintained. They feel like if they take that out, all of a sudden they're going to start losing weight.
Yeah.
Um, I would have them do more like maybe walking, still increasing their movement, because you know it is hard to actually to gain weight, and you know people come to me because they actually want to lose weight. They don't want to come to me and be like, okay, well you're actually gonna have to gain weight for a little
Yeah.
bit. Like, of
Yeah.
course not. So I would make sure that their exercise routine is optimized. So we're lifting weights, we're using progressive overload to actually increase their muscle mass and get them stronger.
Yeah.
We'll increase movement, but in a very low stress way. So none of these like Orange Theory classes. I don't know what you guys have there, but Orange Theory, like, you know, Soul Cycle, any of these like very intense classes.
Yeah.
Even these quote unquote strength classes that basically are giving them like 30 seconds of rest in between
Yeah.
and they have no like there's just like arbitrarily picking weights and I just don't feel like or even CrossFit,
Yeah.
I just don't feel like that's optimal for a lot of
Mhm.
people. So yeah, I would optimize their exercise routine, try to minimize stress as much as possible,
Mhm.
optimize their sleep routine. A lot of people also, because they're so stressed, not eating enough, exercising so
Mhm.
much, their
Mhm.
sleep is not great. And that plays a massive factor in terms of fat loss and muscle building.
Mhm.
Optimize their light environment, making sure they're getting outside throughout the day, in the morning especially,
Mhm.
optimizing their light environment in the evening so that they can get that really good restorative
Yeah.
sleep. And so usually we start there and it depends on their caloric intake. If we keep them there or basically increase that a little bit.
Yeah.
I would try to increase that a little bit, but it really depends on the client and how willing they are to take that
Yes.
leap of faith
Yes.
because it is very scary for a lot of
Yes. Yes.
people. Um,
Yes.
but oftentimes, like just doing that, they will start to lose weight or they're maintaining their weight. And especially somebody on super low amount of calories like that, what I would
Mhm.
try to do is increase their caloric intake little by little, like let's say 50, especially if 1,200 calories a day,
Yeah.
maybe 50 calories a day or 100 calories a day for a
Mhm.
couple weeks
Yeah.
to get them to again start their TDEE starts increasing, right? They start kind of like just fidgeting more and moving more, and they're able to build more muscle in the gym. And hopefully, a lot of times they will start to actually lose weight.
Yes.
Oftentimes they'll maintain their weight, but maintaining your weight and building up that caloric intake is going to be like so massive. We could get somebody up to like a
Absolutely.
really good amount of
Yes.
calories while also increasing their strength in the gym. And I also have a lot of clients do like an in-body or a body fat test so they can actually
Yes.
see those numbers because a lot of people like to see that if the weight on the scale is not moving at all, but they actually can see on their in-body or their body fat scans that, oh, actually you're losing fat and you're gaining muscle and that's why your weight is staying the same. That can be really
Yes.
motivating for a lot of people.
Absolutely. Yeah, because many people are just stuck on the scale at home, right? They just see the scale, and especially ladies, when they look at the scale, they get really stressed out when they see the numbers go up. And it, you know, if their figure is not changing necessarily, or their clothes are fitting even better, they should know that they are gaining muscle mass and they're on the right track, you know. Whereas if you're now gaining weight and you're feeling uncomfortable in your clothes and you're feeling a bit more like, I don't know, a bit more loose on your skin, then that's definitely you're gaining some body fat or even some fluid retention there. But most of the times, if you are in a deficit and you are adherent to it and you are training, strength training, you should definitely be seeing that your body is just changing the body composition. And I feel that not enough people are focusing on that, but they're focusing too much on the scale, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. So which is why I think it's like, I think one of the best things people can do is do body fat testing. You know, it takes like
Yeah.
an extra step and it's some, you know, can be a bit annoying.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think it's really important, especially for those people who, you know, are more like type A personalities and going to be a bit more stressed about the results. Like if they want to go do that every like, you know, week,
Yeah.
2 weeks, 3 weeks, it can be really impactful to keep them on track.
Hmm. You mentioned stress earlier, that could be a thing that would hinder their fat loss or their muscle building progress. Like, do you know the exact mechanism in which stress would affect that? Even if they are adherent to a calorie deficit, they're trained, they're doing everything right, but somehow the stress is inhibiting them to not allowing them to get the results that they want.
I think the biggest issue, so there, you know, we do have the cortisol issue. So your cortisol's getting, if your cortisol's raised throughout the day and it's in misalignment, let's say,
Yeah,
then there's your body's not going to be working optimally,
yeah,
right? So when we talk about cortisol, we also need to talk about melatonin because they are, you know, if your cortisol is high, your melatonin is going to be low. So this is especially important, especially in the evening. We want that really nice cortisol rhythm, right? We want it to be raised in the morning and we
yes.
want it to slowly lower throughout the day and into the evening. It should be very low where your melatonin should be high. And so if that's not happening and your cortisol is high
Hmm.
because you're stressing your body out with exercise or not sleeping properly, or an improper light environment, then
Hmm.
that cortisol is going to be raised and your melatonin's not going to be high. And your melatonin's not going to be high. And so we want that melatonin. I swear, it's like you get on a live and it's like everybody wants to call you.
It's all
And I
good.
have my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I have
Yeah.
phone calls. Like phone calls can come to me, and of course now everybody's calling me at the exact time.
Well,
Um,
it's good that you are Mrs. Popular.
it's like my sister calling right now. Anyway, so we want that melatonin to be high in the evening, and a lot of times most people don't have high melatonin in the evening. They have high cortisol in the evening because they're shining bright blue light in their face from their phones or their computers or overhead lights, and so we want to mitigate that as much as possible because we want melatonin to be high in the evening so that we're getting proper restorative optimal sleep. When you don't get proper optimal sleep, what's going to happen is, first of all, it's going to be so much harder to regulate your caloric intake the next day because you're just going to have a ton of cravings
Mm,
and you're just going to be hungrier because your hormones are going to be disrupted.
yeah,
So and you're also just you're gonna be craving more carbohydrates. You know, so
yes.
instead of reaching for a nice protein-rich meal, you're gonna be reaching for the chips or the
Mm,
pastries at the cafe or, you know, the chocolate at the office or whatever is around you. So it's gonna be
yeah.
so much harder to do that. And so it's just gonna be harder to regulate your caloric intake, which I think is the biggest issue I
Mm,
find with that.
yes,
And sleep is
definitely.
just so restorative. We need that for fat loss and for muscle building.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean that's something that I tell people all the time that actually when you sleep, that's the time where the magic happens. You know, like you don't build muscle in the gym, you break down muscle in the gym, right? Like even during the day, like when we are stressed out, we are basically running a lot of the times on glucose or even gluconeogenesis if our cortisol is high. But actually your body is only able to really use fat if your nervous system state is right. So if you're in a
Mhm.
parasympathetic state. And even, for example, if you are in keto, let's say you're doing a ketogenic style diet, you may not even be in ketosis, just because even if you are following a ketogenic diet, because it's all about your nervous system state as well, and also about the oxygen or the absence of oxygen in the system. So when we have the presence of oxygen, that's aerobic metabolism, right? When we have the absence of oxygen, that's anaerobic metabolism. When our body is stressed out in a sympathetically driven state for prolonged periods of time, that depletes the oxygen levels from inside the body, creates a hypoxic environment inside the body. So that means tissues, cells, muscles, brain, everything is starved from oxygen. So then your body is literally relying on glucose, and if glucose is not present, basically your body has to create glucose from fat, and then you're definitely not going to be in ketosis, right? Or you're not going to be using fatty acids as a form of fuel, which is what we are doing during fat loss.
Mhm.
Like when we are in a deficit, while we sleep in a parasympathetic state, ideally, then we are going to be able to utilize more of that fat during the night, and also like at times of the day when we are not stressed out. But if we are all the time stressed out, and even if we are in a deficit, it can still, not allow us to have the goals that we want, because our body is so cortisol driven. And that makes me think about what you just said about people when they're focused on doing so much cardio and they're not doing strength training. Why is doing aerobic exercise suboptimal compared to resistance training when it comes to fat loss?
Yeah, because a lot of times, especially if you're in a deficit, if you're trying to be, or if you're in a deficit and you're also doing a ton of cardio or just more intense activity, especially like, let's say running, because people are like, running, a lot of people are like, running works for me. I'm like, well, it worked for you at one point, like maybe in the beginning when you first started, because yes, it burns calories, right? And so a lot of people think like, well, I need to just burn more calories.
Yeah.
Sure. But what happens is, first of all, when you're running, your body wants to be light. Your body wants to be light and fast and get better at running. And so
Yeah.
what it's actually going to do is it's actually going to start to pare down muscle. Your body, you're sending a signal to say like,
Yes.
let's get rid of this heavy muscle isn't really like helping us on these runs. Like, let's get rid of
Exactly.
it, especially if we're in a deficit, right?
Yes.
Um, and so that is one of the main issues. The other issue is that your body is so adaptive. Our bodies are so smart. We forget how smart our bodies are. So we are in a deficit and we're also burning all these extra calories by running. What is going to happen eventually? And yes, it works. And this is why people get stuck on this and they're like, well, it worked for me at one point and it's not working for me now. So like maybe I just need to keep running more. Maybe I just need to decrease my calories more. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. But because you're doing all of that, what happens is your body starts to slow down its metabolic rate,
Yeah.
right? So your metabolism gets slower. And so yes, it works because you start to lose fat, you lose weight on the scale, you might be losing some muscle in that time period. Your body adapts, your metabolism slows down, and now you're no
Yeah.
longer losing
Yeah.
fat
Yeah.
or losing weight. And so then what do you have to do in order to continue to lose weight? You have to either increase your cardio output
Yes.
or you have to decrease your caloric intake.
Yeah.
And so what happens when you continue doing that? At some point you're going to be at no calories. You're going to be starving
Yes.
yourself and you're going to be running so much, you're doing so much cardio that you don't have time to do anything else in your life.
Yes.
Right. And so this is a recipe for disaster. And this is, I think, what most people are doing to try to lose weight.
Yeah.
Now, if you put yourself in a little bit of a deficit or even at maintenance and you start to do strength training, proper strength training, where you're actually building muscle and getting stronger,
Keyword
your body
proper.
proper. Yeah, exactly. And also recovering well,
Yes.
right? Recovering enough,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is a big issue.
Yeah.
That your body starts to send a signal to say, we're having all this input, we're getting enough protein, we're doing all the strength training in the gym. Our body wants to start building muscle,
Yeah.
right? So we build muscle, and muscle is so metabolically active. It takes a lot to maintain that. So what happens is you actually, even if you're in a deficit or a maintenance, what happens is your metabolism actually starts to improve. It
Yes.
starts to increase. And so now the amount of calories that you were eating before that was maybe keeping you at maintenance and maintaining your weight is now the same amount of calories that is actually helping you lose weight. So we
Exactly.
see
Yeah.
very drastic differences to the approaches.
Yes.
And yeah, maybe it takes a little bit more patience or it takes doing something different than what you're used to.
Yeah.
But I have seen it time and time and time again.
Mm.
This is the way that it actually works and it's actually sustainable because now you actually get to eat more and
Yeah.
maintain your weight versus the other option where you're eating less and less and less. And
Yes.
I don't know, I love food. I want to be able to eat as much food as possible.
Yeah. I'm the exact same, you know, and this is why I love resistance training. And you don't even need to do much of it. You just need to do it properly, like you mentioned. That. So let's talk about that then. You know, you see people who are going to the gym year after year. You see them there. Maybe you are improving. They are in the same place, same doing the same machines, same reps, same weight that they've been doing all along. If there is one thing which I believe that can change everybody's, you know, outcomes in terms of body composition, even if they don't change anything else, at least for like in an initial period, is if they start increasing their weights or their reps or some form of intensity week by week, and they do that on a consecutive basis, even if they don't eat enough protein, even if they don't sleep, the stress of the on the body, where we are demanding it to get stronger and we are tearing down muscle, is such a big threat to the brain that it says, okay, I'm going to give you more muscle, I'm going to give you more strength, even in the absence of these other things. Of course, eventually you're going to hit a wall, you're probably going to under recover, you're probably going to burn out, you know, reach some injuries or something like this. But imagine how important it is to progressively overload our system over time to be able to actually see improvements. So how important do you think progressive overload is?
Yeah, I think it's the most important thing when you're working out. Like if that's the only thing that you can do, if that's the only thing that you focus
Yeah.
on, you will see results.
Yeah.
And yeah, so you know, a lot of people, you're right, they go to the gym, they do the same machines, they do the same weight. You know, people are like, oh, I do, you know, I do 15 pounds. I'm like, 15 pounds on what exercise? Yeah, just do 15 pounds. I'm like, okay, that's just like crazy. Like you obviously are gonna have different strength in different areas of your body, and they've been doing
Yeah.
that same amount of weight for like years and years or
Yeah.
months and months, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I think it's really important for you or somebody else to create a plan for you
Yeah.
and have this plan where you're writing down how much, and especially people who are just like in the gym like not writing anything down. I'm like, what do you, how are you remembering all the weights that you could do? It's like it's crazy to me. Write it down, write how many reps and how much weight you did, and every week, and you should stay on the same program.
Yeah.
Like your weekly program should repeat for at least 4 to 6 weeks, maybe more.
12,
Depend.
12 weeks, 12 weeks, I would say.
Oh, interesting. I change my program every month or so.
Hmm.
Um, but it's also a lot of similar exercises. So it's not like
Hmm.
we're changing things, you know.
Exactly. I mean, as long as it's like, what's the difference between like, you know, a lat pull down with a medium handle versus
Right.
a wide grip? It's very small differences, but I get it. Yeah, it changes the stimulation to the body because it helps to elicit a little bit of stimulus, a little bit of growth.
Especially if you're a more advanced lifter, right? Like, you know,
Yes.
if when you're
Yes.
first starting, you're going to be able to continue to improve. At some point, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, we're going to need to maybe change the stimulus.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you should stay in the same program, and week after week, you should try to improve that. And that doesn't mean, okay, I'm going to add an extra set, like, or add another exercise. No, we want to stay in that same program, same amount of sets and rep range, and you want to try to increase it. So I always say, like, if you're trying to get 6 to 8 reps and you're hitting 8 reps, then you need to be increasing the weight. You
Yeah.
know, people are like, oh, like, but it's hard. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But like, if you increase the weight, you're going to find that it's actually not, it gets less, it gets easier,
Yeah.
right? And so even if it means, even if that means, you know, I'm a small female. So sometimes when I'm doing chest presses, it's going to be really hard to like add 5 pounds to a
Yes.
chest press that's already
Yes.
like pretty close to failure. So
Yes.
even if that means adding, you know, a half a pound on
Yes.
each side or a pound on each side, that is still going to elicit a little bit more stress on the muscle, and that is going to, you're actually going to be able to improve. But
Yeah.
basically every week you should be trying to increase
Yeah.
the amount of reps you're doing or the weight that you're doing for those amount of reps.
Absolutely. And there are multiple ways to progressively overload if people are stuck, you know, even just with the weight that they are using. Like I find that myself, I've been hitting plateaus all the time now because, you know, I've reached such a level where I'm lifting weights where, okay, I've maxed out what I can lift. And so now I'm kind of stuck with, if I can't do any more reps, I have to maybe do more sets, or I need to do more time under tension, or I can just try and do maybe one rep more rather than increasing the weight. Because sometimes, I even adding that 0.5 pounds can't be too threatening to my body, can't be too much, and I might, be too close to failure. I might be failing too much, right? I'm not doing the technique correct. So I can just find strategies in which a way that I can actually progressively overload. So for people listening, like, you don't need to like increase the weight necessarily. Like, you can start off week 1 with like 20 kilos, and then you can like, start with 8 reps. You could not do more than 8 reps on week 1. And then every single week you add 1 more rep until you get to 15 reps.
Totally.
And then after, when you get to 15 reps, you again reset. You lift now 25 kilos, you take it all the way up. You can use many, many different strategies. And so people don't need to feel like, oh, I need to, because imagine, where are you going to become Ronnie Coleman? Like, at some point you're leg pressing 500 kilos on the leg press. It's not really attainable, right? Especially for a natural athlete. So I think it's important that once we hit like a specific point, that we know how to change that. But I think for most people who are starting out, it's very easy for them to start increasing the weights, because you get what we call the newbie gains at the beginning, and that's the most advantageous period for people to take advantage of, like especially in their lifting career, because the amount of muscle that they're going to build, even if the technique is bad, is going to be insane. So it's so important that we have a good strategy in place from the beginning. And if you are not exercising already, it's important that you do hire a coach who knows what they're doing, because then you can get on the right track from the beginning and get the most out of it. Because I didn't do that when I started training 14 years ago, and I paid the price, and I learned, and I got a lot of like aches and pains in my joints, and I learned a lot about mobility and functional training and other forms of training, because bodybuilding totally smashed my body. And now I do like a little bit of everything, which is what I call functional bodybuilding. And so, yeah, it's so important that you actually adhere to some plan, and that you are able to stick to it and to do it correctly with good technique. Because again, even if we do increase the weight, if the technique is not good, we never want to build on top of a dysfunctional foundation, right? So this is why me and Amanda are constantly saying that it's so important that you hire a coach and you actually get the technique right of things. And you don't even necessarily need to do progressive overload in the gym. It can be even at home, like you don't need to go to the gym to see effective results. So let's take a body weight push-up. You do one today, you do 2 tomorrow, you do 3 the day after. As long as you're progressing slowly over time, eventually you will reach a limit, right? Where you've done 100 push-ups, you can't do no more. And then you feel like, what's the point of me continuing to do push-ups? That's where you maybe need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe I want to buy some tools for home or something like this, so that you can keep on going forward. And why me and Amanda are talking about this is because by progressively overloading, we're able to efficiently build muscle mass. And if we build muscle mass, that increases our metabolic rate, which means that allows us to eat more food, and while even maybe potentially losing fat or maintaining the body fat that we have, but at least our body composition is changing over time. So eventually we're able to eat just more food in general. And I feel that this is so important for people to get right, because if they don't, they're constantly stuck on eating that low calorie, repeating the same cycles with their routines, and they're never able to get out of it, because they're not willing to change their organism. By building muscle, you are literally growing organs. You're growing energy demanding organs on your body, which is actually requiring so much more energy. So it's an absolute blessing to have more muscle on your body. Not only does it make you strong and more capable for life, it also looks good, and it also makes you feel like more confident, and you get to eat more food. So I don't know anything better than that.
Yeah, and one last thing I want to say about that too, because I work with so many women. I work with men also, but I work with a lot of
Yeah.
women. And I think you when we go back to mindset, right? It's like it becomes, working out becomes more of an empowering activity for you than running, where I feel like a lot of people will go to do cardio and it's like almost like a punishment. Like, I ate too much, let me go run it off. And we start to switch that in their minds, and people start to go into the gym, and it becomes a reward for them rather than a punishment, right? You go in there and you're actually like lifting, and you're like, oh, look, I ate a little bit more food. Now I'm actually lifting, my squats are, heavier. Or it becomes this little game for people to play, where it's like, how much weight can I lift and how much stronger can I get, rather than like, how much more can I push myself to punish myself when they're running or doing cardio? So for
Exactly.
women, I think it's like one of the best things. I mean, it's one of the best things I ever did for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think for ladies, it's so important, especially when you think about reproductive function as well. If you are constantly utilizing all the energy for, and you're driving your cortisol levels up, that's totally going to throw off the hormones. It's going to affect men too, but we're not going to feel it the same way as women do. Like for women, they might, their cycle may be dysregulated or something like that. There's going to be some clear, obvious signs, right? Whereas for men, maybe we might feel like lack of strength, or we feel like tired, or we don't have the energy. So this is why it's so important to shift the type of activity that we're doing, because the type of activity that we do also determines the type of metabolism that we use as well. So that's why strength training, resistance training is so good, because we utilize mainly glucose as a fuel, right? And that's one of the coolest things, because now you're able to also lower your circulating blood glucose if you have diabetes, or if you want to prevent diabetes, for example. Like muscles act like sponges. And so the bigger your muscles are, the bigger the sponge, it can absorb more glucose. So it's reservoir for glucose. And yeah, if you eat carbohydrate rich food, it's more likely going to go into your muscle than to go into your fat stores. And it's also going to lower your blood glucose, which is going to decrease your stress on your pancreas and on your insulin as well. So definitely the type of activity that we do really influences like how our outcomes are going to be. So I think this is why it's so important that me and you are hammering this home today, because it's so important for people to understand, because still to this day it's thought that running or doing some form of cardio is a great thing for fat loss, when in reality, no, it's great for movement. Maybe moving, and maybe not doing it like so often. Maybe sprinting is more ideal, because that's more like as a form of resistance training, because you're going all out. So it's basically like resisting against gravity, resisting against the air, and you're doing it for short bursts and periods of time. That's also going to have very profound impacts later on. It's going to utilize all your glucose up as well, and it's also going to increase your growth hormone, going to build muscle, utilize fat. So it's a totally different outcome. So important for people to know the difference between the two type of activities. Tell me, like, the relationship between gut health and fat loss. Like, how important do you think those two are?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a connection there, right? Like if we have some dysbiosis in our gut or certain types of bacteria in the gut, they are going to help. They're going to basically make us absorb more calories from our food
Yeah,
than not.
yeah,
It can get like very complicated, and the amount of supplements out there that are there to heal your gut are just like, it makes me crazy. But I think if we go back to the foundations, our
yeah.
gut lining can repair itself within like 2 days if we're doing the right things. So like living a circadian lifestyle, um, one of the things that I hammer home so often, people are probably tired of me saying it, is like not eating, and back to the sleep thing, like not eating so close to bed.
Yeah.
It's like if our bodies are busy digesting food, like first of all, that's going to disrupt your gut. Your gut does so much healing in the evening. Like we do so much healing while we are sleeping. And if your body is digesting food instead of doing the healing that it needs to do, things are going to be thrown off, right? I
Mm,
also feel like the healthier your gut is, the more likely you're going to crave healthier
that's
foods.
true.
You know, so I think it is really important to take care of the gut.
Mm,
Also, like if you have a healthy gut, you're not going to be bloated. You're not going to have stomach pains. You're going to
mm,
actually look leaner. You're not going to have as much inflammation. You're going to look
mm.
leaner.
Yes.
So beside the fact of like calories in, calories out, like that is going to be really important to just how you
Yes.
feel. And of course, you're then going to choose better
Yeah.
options.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely you said about the inflammation aspect that, obviously the gut is a huge part of our immune system, right? So if the gut is not working well, then if it's more permeable, if it's allowing things to enter the bloodstream, that's definitely going to alter how we feel and how we perform and how we look. And that's going to make us think that, oh, I'm fat, when in reality, no, we're not
Right.
fat, we're inflamed.
Right.
Like, well, okay, it can be fat and inflamed, it can be both, because most of the times those things come together based on the habits. But you can't be like, let's say, healthy and you're doing everything right, but you can still be inflamed, right? So if some things are off, maybe with your diet or with your sleep, then you can have inflammation, and that's gonna make us hold on to more fluids. And I see this all the time with people where they really get stressed out if they have a lot of swelling in the body, or they weigh a lot on the scale, like from one day to the next. And I just tell people, well, did you do something out of the ordinary? Did you drink alcohol? Did you put like extra salt on your foods? Did you eat something processed, for example? And most of the times they did. And or they ate something with wheat or gluten in it, and maybe it didn't do so well with their biology. And so, yeah, then your body's like going to have a response to that. It's going to have a reaction. And that reaction is basically going to present itself in one way or another, whether that is like spots on the face, like on the skin, or it's going to be puffiness or, swollen face. And so if we take care of our nutrition, then we're able to take care of our gut health and also the circadian rhythms, like you mentioned. And I think that low stress also is super important for gut health, because when we are stressed out, I think our digestive system is not working optimally. We're not able to absorb nutrients as well. We're probably, again, as you said, that we're not able to, lose fat either. So it's a very suboptimal environment to be in when we're in a stress state. And many things, even foods, can be a stressor to the body. Most people don't realize that, because if we think about that, we have a stress bucket, a stress reservoir, and we would add in there all the things. Well, food definitely would be one of them. Processed foods, alcohol, anything that is not natural is basically going to be a stressor on the body. What else would you add in that stress bucket?
Yeah, I mean, overeating for sure too. Like, of course, certain foods, but even overeating like good foods. Like, I find like eating late, overeating. If I eat too much, like I will just see my HRV on my Aura ring just like go, like just plummet down.
Yeah,
So like we do have to know that digestion, like digestion is a stress, right? So if we're constantly snacking
yeah,
all day and
yeah,
eating all day, we're not giving our body that time to heal. Yeah, again, like cardio, not sleeping enough, just like too much intense exercise.
yes,
I mean, like relationships, like
yes,
it should, the way you're interacting with people, the people in your life is really important. So just like, be really intentional about who gets your time and attention, and like it's just not worth it to be to be stressed
yes,
in a lot of ways. And even just like back to mindset, like the way that you think about
yeah,
things, like if you're looking at
yeah.
things as like, oh, this is like a stressful situation, that's going to affect you more than like looking at that same situation being like, oh, it's exciting,
Mhm.
like what a challenge, like
Absolutely.
it's going to be a whole different. Your mind is so
It,
powerful, so we really
it
have
is.
to yeah, yeah.
It is. How are we doing for time? Are we good?
It's I do have to run because we're 5 minutes over.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
I'll
it's
just
okay.
finalize this with like a
Yeah.
final sentence. So basically, like what me and Amanda have been saying in this whole conversation is all very, very important. But if you are not taking care of your stress bucket, if we are loading all of the stuff in there, we are going to be diminishing a lot of our efforts that we are putting in. We may be resistance training, we may be like eating enough protein, we may be doing all the things, we may be like trying to sleep, but there are some specific stressors in our life that can throw off our progress quite massively. Of course, we're still going to make some progress, but it's not going to be as good as we want it to be. So not only is it important to do all the things, but it's as I tell a lot of people, is that it's a lot about removing things from your life. The more things you remove that you don't need from your life, the more like energy you have for the things that actually matter, and your system has the energy for the things that actually matter. Because if your body's focusing on detoxifying all the time and lowering inflammation, its priority is not fat loss and it's not muscle building. So this is why it's so important that we're able to do everything together to make sure that we have a holistic lifestyle, a low tox lifestyle, so that we're not intoxicating ourselves, from all the directions: microplastics, foods, EMFs, blue lights, toxic relationships, all the things that you mentioned, basically. And we are resistance training. We are eating 1 gram per pound of body weight in protein, and we're doing all the things. then we're able to get the results that we actually want. So thank you so much, Amanda, for taking the time to talk with me today. You can tell everybody where they can find you, or where they can find your courses, or
Yeah, so here we are. Well, we're on Instagram. I know you're gonna share this in other places, but
yeah.
on Instagram, my handle is Raw Fitness and Nutrition. Also, my website, rawfitnessandnutrition.com. I have links there for everything. I have my courses there, my recipe book. There's also a ton of free guides. So if you're just kind of like new to me and just trying to like figure out, what I'm about, there's a ton of free guides there. I have a few free recipes, fat loss mistakes that you're making. There's a free guide there. So just all of my information is on my website. So you can just take a look at that and gather whatever information is going to be helpful for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank
Amanda. And I hope
you.
that you have an awesome day. I felt like we could have kept on going for another hour. We'll have to do it again in the future.
For sure. It was so nice to have a chat.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You as well. Take care.
Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Take care. Bye bye.
This is the Fitness Wisdom Podcast.